Hello there, World of Tankers. Welcome to the channel. I'm, of course, your host, World of Blitz, and in today's video, we are going to be talking about the Tier 10 auto-loading American heavy tank, not the T-57 heavy, but the M-VI-Yoh, or the YOH, however you want to pronounce it. I've been told it goes as Yo, but, yeah, it sounds kind of weird, especially for an American design. I really don't know why they would name it that, but nonetheless, Blitzpost has gotten the statistics on hand for us to talk about in today's video, and well, I'm just going to say right before I get into it that the gun needs to be tweaked because it carries two guns currently, a 105mm autoloader and as well a 120mm autoloader. Now the calibers on both guns seem kind of weird for the damage per shot, but nonetheless I'll be getting into the tank statistics in today's video, and as well we're going to be talking about the Sombra SM, which also has its statistics leaked because I think both of them fit very similarly in the intro clip and everything else like that. So as always, if you enjoyed today's video and you want to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. I always try to keep up to date on the news statistics and other stuff like that. And thanks to Blitzpost for being super quick on their information. We're able to get this stuff out really quickly. So I'm going to be breaking into the statistics of the vehicle now. Now this is the M-VI-Yoh, the Yo, blah blah blah, whatever you want to call it. The tank is quite a heavy vehicle, in fact, for 53 tons. That's a lot more than I thought he was going to weigh to be this weird pike-nosed looking American vehicle. So it weighs quite a bit, 53 tons. You can see with both guns it mounts the exact same weight. So no mobility differences between either gun. There actually is, believe it or not, mobility differences. Sometimes you can run a heavier gun and it will make your tank be a little bit slower, but not really much of a difference here. Now you can see that with the 120mm, yeah, your base dispersion doesn't seem too good. And I'm not sure if this is with no equipment on. I'm guessing this is with no equipment. This is probably with no food or anything else like that. So you could probably get this dispersion down to about maybe 1.8, 1.7 after running all equipment and everything. So probably not too bad, but from base values, 0.345 is not fantastic. The aiming time, though, is not bad at all. You can see both have the exact same aiming time. Now, the real thing here is that on-movement dispersion is something that we don't have a value of right now, which is something that I'd like to see. So the 105mm could have way better on-movement dispersion, which would make it a much more enjoyable gun in a lot of aspects, especially long-range shooting. Now, both guns have very similar damage per minute. The 105 has 2,901, and the 120 has 2,971. And you can see the magazine reload of the 120 is about 4 seconds. Actually, it's just about 3 seconds longer, I guess. I thought it was, yeah. It's 3 seconds longer. I'll put it like that. I'm not going to go into my big brains math in the morning. So it's 3.17 seconds quicker on the 105mm. But here's the part that I don't understand. Sure, the 105mm gains an extra shell. That's the nice thing about it, right? You'd think, okay, I gain an extra shell. It does 300 damage per shot. 3 times 3 is 9, so it does 900 damage in a clip. And it does all that in 5 seconds, which all sounds pretty good. Until you look at the other 120mm and see that it does 450 in a single shot, which 4.5 times 2 is 9, which means that in just, well, you can see here it's 1.4 seconds. So in 2.8 seconds, it's dealing 900 damage. So why would you ever use the 105mm if the 120mm can dump out the exact same amount of damage in half the time? I don't even understand that at this point. Maybe if they made the alpha of the 105mm 350, I would completely get why you'd want to use the 105mm. It would make sense because you've got a little bit more alpha per shot, so that, you know, that way you've actually done more in the clip compared to the 120 just gets out that bam bam and then it's done. You back in the cover, kind of like the Barask in PC, if you know what I'm talking about. But for some reason, they made the 120mm literally have almost every single advantage, apart from a little bit of pen. The heat on the gun is not the best. At 320, it's not bad by any means, but it's also not great. With calibrated shells on, it's going to be maybe about 350-ish pen, so it's decent. But the other gun at 330 is going to be like 360 pen. So it is going to be a little bit more on the pen, but overall, it's not going to be too much of a difference, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. I would highly suggest when this tank comes out, and I'll always say this if these are the true stats, to go for the 120mm because that average damage is much better on the HE, much better on the heat, and much better on the AP. Now, the tank's got 7 degrees of gun depression on the 120 millimeter, and this is the big kicker. The 105 has 10 degrees. This is the big difference. If you don't mind using gun depression, I'm personally used to using my 5A, so it probably wouldn't bother me too much, and you can still work most lines with 7 degrees of gun depression. However, the other gun is 10 degrees of gun depression, so it is a question. Would you rather be able to have 3 extra degrees of gun depression to trade off that clip? So we're going to be seeing when it does get finally released, probably next update or the one after that. It'll be here within the next couple of months. I have a feeling that both guns are going to be very, very situationally aware, because in most scenarios, the 120 millimeter is going to be better. Just getting out that whop in 1 or 2.8 seconds and backing in the cover, in my opinion, makes it much deadlier. Even though it's got less gun depression, even though the pen's a little bit less and the accuracy is probably going to be a little bit worse, just being able to dump that much damage into somebody in such a quick amount of time. Imagine an IS-7 being able to deal 2 460 damage shots in a matter of literally 2.6, 2.8 seconds. That's insane. You could never think of that. It'd make the IS-7 literally OP. So this tank here, with just 10 less alpha than an IS-7, yeah, I'd like to see how it does perform, and the 7 degrees of gun depression is nothing bad in my opinion. Now, the armor, we don't know. It says 200 millimeters on the turret, but you can see the turret. It's weird. My guess is the turret's going to be practically impenetrable all around the gun area, but the back is going to have a lot of weak spots. Now, the part that you can see here where my mouse is, that's not going to count as armor to what I'm aware. The Annihilator part doesn't count as armor here, so this part probably won't count as armor either. The side of the turret at 80 is quite weak. It's actually extremely weak. And the rear at 45 is just terrible. So that's one thing to keep in mind. You'll also see that the hull armor, well, 175 is decent for the upper plate. If you angle 175, just to put an example, the WZ-113's upper plate is 120 millimeters, angled very, very steeply to get it up to about 280 or 270. So it can be very strong if you're able to get them at very steep angles. Because this is 175 at a very steep angle, I'd say that upper plate is ranging upwards of 270 to 300 millimeters thick, and if you're using gun depression, virtually impenetrable. But the lower plate is going to be extremely weak, and I can vouch for that right now. And the side armor only being 165 will be very, very easy to overmatch with a lot of shells. Obviously not with the 3 calibers rule, but just you'll easily be able to penetrate that side armor if you got the side of the tank pretty much every single time. But it does look like it's got a boat-shaped hull, which will make it very weird to penetrate. Now, concealment, I don't really have much about that. Top speed, though, 35 kilometers per hour, not the best. 15 in reverse, it's decent. It's definitely good for an American top speed in reverse. Most only go at 10. The E3, the E5, every heavy. But, yeah, it's good on the mobility, 31 kilometers per hour. It's not super fast, but it's also not super slow. So overall, what do I have to say about this tank? Well, looking at it here, I think it's going to be a pretty good vehicle. It's got a little bit slow traverse speed at 25 degrees a second, but it's not awful. It's got great guns looking for it, 3,000 DPM for an autoloader at this caliber with this much armor frontally, hull down. It seems it's going to be really, really strong, and it's probably going to be nerfed by the time it is released, because I do think that these guns are a little bit strong on DPM for the type of vehicle we're looking at here. But on the contrary, this tank will struggle immensely against super heavy vehicles. Vehicles like an E100 or a Krondong or any super heavy like an IS-4 that's on a hull down position. Because while that tank's very strong hull down, a vehicle like a Krondong hull down is going to be a heck of a lot stronger than this tank, because it can't pen the Kron, and this tank, I'm not sure how the armor is going to work, but we're going to have to find out when it does come out. But breaking into the Sombra now, this is the Tier 8 autoloading heavy tank, and everything looked fine on this vehicle to me. I was looking at the dispersion, quite poor. You know, it's probably going to be able to get to about 0.33 or so when you're done upgrading it. You know, damage per minute, 2,082 seems about right for a Tier 8 vehicle. By the way, this thing weighs 70 tons. That's insane. The aiming time, though, at 5.7 seconds seems pretty good. And then I looked at the shell reload time, and I realized that this thing has a 2.4 second interclip for 310 average damage. Now, to put in comparison, the Emil-1, which is currently one of the most overpowered tier 8s in the game because of the clip, takes 6 seconds to dump all of its shells out. This tank takes literally 4.8. 4.8. That is a 1.2 seconds time off the interclip in total. That's 1.2 seconds. That is massive. Just to put in comparison, the T-57 Heavy got a 1 second reduction when it was buffed way back, and that made the tank from a decent vehicle to almost broken in certain aspects, which is insane. So the fact that this tank is going to be able to get out all 930 damage in a matter of 4.8 seconds is going to be broken, especially when you look at the pen of 232, the average penetration of the premium at 263. Yeah, that's pretty dang crazy, and I'm not looking forward to seeing these things out there on the battlefield, especially with its pretty good mobility, going 40 forwards, 18 in reverse. It's got a good average speed at 27. You can see it's decently mobile in the traverse speed. Overall, this tank is not looking like it's going to be super fun to come up against. And you'll see that the turret armor is actually decent. The turret is 200 millimeters thick, which is way thicker than what it is on PC. Now, I'm not 100% sure if that's how the whole turret's going to be, because I have looked at the tank on PC, and it has no turret armor whatsoever. You can also see that the hull is 155 millimeters thick. That doesn't seem like much until you realize that this thing has 10 degrees of gun depression, and that means that if you're working a ridgeline and that turret armor is somewhat decent, this thing could be a very formidable opponent to come up against. So, what do I have to say overall for everything in this vehicle? I think it's going to be OP from the current stats just because of that interclip. It should be 3 seconds, and then I think everything is fine. But because it's 2.4, I really think that right now it needs to be changed. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hopefully all of you are enjoying today's video. As always, if you want to see more like it, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below, as it's going to help out the channel a crazy amount. But other than that, hopefully all of you are doing well out there. Stay happy, stay healthy, and I'll be seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.